Good morning, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about tape. Okay, so one of the really important things I think people should carry in their pack, and then also, if nothing else, uh, have some of this squirreled away in your house, your work shed, your vehicle, whatever the case may be. Uh, some varieties of tape, and I just brought, for example, today some pretty basics. We got some electrical tape, 1 inch Gorilla tape, your standard duct tape, and your normal big roll of Gorilla tape. I know there's some more out there. I don't have any T-Rex tape, but I hear it's actually a bit stronger than the Gorilla tape. But for most things that, you know, I need to cover, this type will pretty much do it all for me. So uh, we'll get the camera readjusted here, and I'll go over some things I like to tend to do, especially running under the scenario. We're talking survival, prepping, and that sort of thing. So we'll get the camera readjusted and get into that. One of the things that I'm typically known around my little area, the people know me for my uses of tapes, is real quick making my own bandages and stuff, because it's usually out in the type of work I do and just the lifestyle I live, constantly getting abrasions and some cuts and stuff of that nature, pretty deep scratches. So with this run under scenario, we're working on could be a survival situation and stuff, and keeping your wounds closed up to keep from getting dirt and other debris stuck into it, which can really intensify infection risk. I'd say, like, a lot of times, very rarely I'll carry an actual first aid kit. Now, typically, I always have at least this 1 inch Gorilla tape. Actually, I pulled this out of one of my kits. And we'll just use this normal duct tape, for example. Let's say I got a laceration or a light cut on my fingers. Now, typically, what I can do with this, if I can manage to get it off my finger there. Almost got it. There we go. Cut off about 2.5, 3 inches, depending on how big your finger is. And typically in my kits, I'll have some type of something for toilet paper. If not, just little packs of napkins and stuff. For example, today we're just going to simply use a bit of paper towel. Now, you can obviously take a knife and score this to reduce the width of it, which is pretty easy to do. And this stuff usually does tear pretty easy, so that's kind of handy sometimes. Now, if I can get it to behave itself. There we go. Now, very true, you do not want to get, unless you have no other choice and it's a matter of bleeding to death, but it's not a good idea. Let's say you had a pretty deep cut across your finger, to put raw tape on that, because it's going to stick to the wound itself, and then once removing that, it could tear the wound open. And try to avoid that at all costs. But now, typically, I will take a little bit of this, and we're going to rip up small enough square. Sometimes you can double or triple layered if you wish. Like, we'll just make a bigger piece, and I'll fold that up a couple times, and I can put this about dead center of that duct tape. Now, if you happen to have some antibacterial ointment with you, dab that onto that before you put it on. There you go. Quick, simple. You got a Band-Aid. And that could, if you're out there and it's a bad situation and stuff, you absolutely got to keep your wounds from getting infected. If you didn't have any antibacterial ointment of some variety to put on that, if you can hunt you down a pine tree that's got some sap on it, you can literally take that sap and put it in place of your antibacterial ointment. It kind of does the same thing. But I'll also warn you this, it's incredibly sticky. So you may have that same problem once removing bandage, it wanting to adhere to the wound itself. So, you gotta use your common sense there. If it's just a pretty deep scratch and you're just needing to keep it clean to prevent infection, shouldn't be too big of a deal. But if you have a serious cut, especially one that may need sutures, I don't know, you may not want to necessarily get anything on the sides of that wound that's going to actually cause it to tear or rip open, especially if you manage to get it under control. But just food. All right, now, pardon my canoe paddle of the foot here, but just I need it for the example of some of the usefulness of this. If any of y'all are familiar with moleskin, and that really helps your feet if you're having to walk very long distances and stuff, and you can get blisters rubbed on your foot, but particularly it's going to happen around your heel or up here near your toes, and that's another use. Now, I'd actually recommend the Gorilla Tape because it's a bit thicker and tougher. However, if needs be, you can take the duct tape and apply it to these areas where you're going to be prone to get blisters. I'm sure everybody's feet are different. You may not have the same hot spot that other people do. Typically, I'll get mine, like, if I get them right here on the side right here, pretty bad. So roll that over. There we go. It's not pretty, but if you're doing a long hike and it's impromptu, that right there could save you a lot of woes, because you've got to keep your feet as healthy as possible. Especially, we're talking about, survival and that kind of thing. A lot of scenarios where people are, we're talking about, I'm going to hike out to this location, make sure, for one, your footwear is appropriate, and, if you don't have moleskin, at the very least, throw a bundle of duct tape, or my preference, mind you, get the good stuff, get this Gorilla Tape. And that could really come in handy to save you a lot of pain and anguish later. Another well-known use for duct tape is using it as a fire extender, and it does work pretty well. Well, typically, I find it better if you can manage to strip these down just a little bit. And kind of just wad that up a little bit, and she'll kind of just stick to yourself. Now just get one exposed edge on that. Let's get some fire put to it. Well, this burns for a decent amount of time, and it's quite a hot flame, because we're dealing with plastics and stuff, and I wouldn't recommend getting too close and sucking in a lot of that black smoke coming off that. But the purpose of the demonstration being that it is quite effective, and as you saw, that didn't take very much. That was a fairly small piece I used there, and it's actually going quite strong. And just for comparison's sake, let's get a small piece of the Gorilla Tape. And we'll kind of do the same thing. We'll get some smaller pieces shredded up out of that. And we'll just use this to get her started. And this was from the 1-inch stripper Gorilla Tape, and that might have been a 2-inch length of it. I just cut off right there, and it's going pretty good. And these will definitely help you get a fire going in some very stubborn conditions, because often, usually something bad happens and you're out there and you have to have the ability to make the fire. You can bet your bottom dollar it's going to bend the week of a bunch of rain. So if you don't happen to have any other items with you to help you get your fire started, like some Tender Quicks or some homemade wax dip cotton balls or anything like. And, if you just simply had something like this in your kit, that could do so many things for you. Very multifunctional piece of kit that's worth its weight in gold, in my opinion. Also, real quick, like I said, there's ideal things and there's, just doing what you got to do to get by. Let's say you got damaged piece of clothing. This can act as a quick patch until you can manage to get yourself somewhere where you get some kind of thread and needle kind of thing going on to sew it up. And if nothing else, use that as a temporary patch until you can kind of get where you're going. And that's a general real good use for duct tape in general anyway. It's a nice, real quick, easy patch. Most of it's fairly well water resistant to boot, so that's also another pretty nice little thing you can do with it. And just as easily as I patch my pants there, if you're using some kind of tarp, you can just as easily patch a tarp. And that's definitely one of the very good pros about carrying the duct tape with you. If you have a real quick, simple shelter like a tarp or even a canvas tarp, is a good temporary patch. Now, typically when I do a tarp, I actually put one piece on each side of the material. That way it's got a good seal in between both. Now, I haven't used electrical tape much, but mind you, you can use it similar to what you've already seen, but I'll be honest with you, it's nowhere near as useful as like the duct tape. Now, if you had like a damaged handle on a tool, this kind of comes nice. You can wrap that around the handle, make it smoother and a little more comfortable. And I have used it for Band-Aid material quite frequently. This is also usually one of the ones you'll find me, I'll have with me. And if you do happen to have to be tinkering around with anything electrical while you're out there, and this is more kind of a handyman kind of thing, it is nice to have it, to do that with. But I pretty much use it the same way, and my typical emergency use for that, for survival stuff, is, the makeshift Band-Aid. I'll do the same thing. If nothing else, if I don't even have access to, say, this paper towel material or toilet paper or something of the like, the white rag I always keep at my side. I can actually cut a small piece of that off and use it in place of that. But, it's pretty much the same principle. Nothing too fancy, but in a pinch, it works. If I'm out there middle kind of nowhere working on something, or I'm out in the bush doing some work, got some pretty deep scratches, maybe I had a couple of really big thorns off something, puncture me pretty deep, nothing else, I can clean the surface area lightly with some hand sanitizer, tape it up until I can get some proper medical treatment for it. But like I said, in general, this is primarily about, preventing an infection. But, that I understand a lot of people will be like, well, it's ridiculous. Just do this, do that, carry this. Oh, okay, well, that's fair enough. But a lot of times, especially like I said, when you're out there, what you can carry is kind of at a premium, the space in your kits. And if I'm just on there's nothing wrong in the world, relativity here, I'm just out doing my daily thing. You're not really thinking of taking a great big old backpack full of survival gear and camping gear and stuff with you. You're traveling usually as light as you can if you're out there in the field doing things. And that's a pretty simple kind of thing here. Let me put some fire to this. Now this will burn, but it don't really do, excuse me, quite as well as the duct tape. It's vinyl, and it's harder for it to take a flame, and it smells atrocious. There we go. It almost went. Hold on. That's about too close for comfort. We'll drop down here and go. Better look. It's so hard to really just to simply catch like the other stuff. It's almost not worth it, because the effort I'm putting into catching this on fire, I could have just put raw flame to whatever I'm trying to get going and been just as effective. That one's not even one to take. But yeah, so that's another reason why definitely the duct tape to me is just have for a general emergency preparedness item that's far superior than the vinyl electrical tape. Like I said, you know, I definitely say, hey, have the vinyl electrical tape versus no tape at all. But, you know, you get the most bang for your buck. Personally, out of all the ones I'm presenting to you now, and especially for its size and compactability, easy to carry, this 1-inch roll of Gorilla Tape, that's definitely one I can suggest. That right there is pretty handy. It's really tough. And like I said, the multi-functionality of it makes it worth its weight by far, even, you know, its larger footprint. Into, you can, in a pinch, you can take this stuff, get a longer strips rolled out, split out, and you can make some kind of cordage out of that if necessary. But I've done it before. It's not great, but, you know, it's one of them deals where you got to say, hey, it's better than nothing. Like always, I highly recommend, you know, continuing your research. My hope and thought here is just kind of get the idea in your head, and like for a thought experiment, think of what you think you could imagine you could do with this stuff and run through a whole bunch of different random scenarios. Do a little extra research, because, you know, the old thing, duct tape, 1,001 uses. I do believe someone even wrote a book, literally, about the uses of duct tape. So, you know, it's pretty much a no-brainer in my book, and to have this stuff on hand, man, it's so handy. And like I said, you know, often on this channel, I'm not just, you know, showing you something, hey, this, you know, this is pretty nice, y'all just grab something out to have it. You know, like I said, you know, the name of the channel and all, we're kind of going off, you know, bushcraft and survival and prepping, homesteading. That's kind of the area in which I like to focus on. So just for a homesteader and a prepper kind of thing, this stuff's invaluable. And having it for emergencies in your kit, you know, I mean, just small as this is so worth throwing that in your kit somewhere. And two, if you got the space, if you can find something like a plastic bowl with a sealable lid, I'd recommend you put this in there, because keeping one of these in my Maxpedition Fat Max, I found out over time, especially, you know, I'm toting it everywhere with me, in the heat will deform it a little bit, and the adhesive kind of oozes out on the side a little bit. It was kind of a struggle actually getting that out of the pouch I had that stuck in. So having something maybe really small that is close to the size of this, where it's not taking up a bunch of extra room, may be a good idea. Because I did notice that you can have some, especially got anything else laying with this, I mean, it will, after it's been exposed to, you know, heat and stuff, it will make stuff get covered in that adhesive. So keep that in mind. All right, now like I said, I can jabber on quite a bit about duct tape and just tape in general. I mean, there's just so much you can do with it. So with that in mind, like I said, now make this like a thought experiment. I think that's one of the healthiest things you can do, regardless of what it is. Any piece of kit, gear, or something you're thinking about you might want, or stuff you may already have, run through in your head all kinds of different scenarios and how you could use it this way, use it that way. You know, it's a good mental exercise to help get you kind of ready for the idea of when stuff happens. You're not sitting there, you know, like a deer in a headlight. You know, you've already, it helps, you know, you practice in your mind these scenarios and how you should react to it. And you keep doing that over and over and over. It'll help you in the long run. So with that, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all soon in another video.